This talk is sponsored by Livepeer. Livepeer is a decentralized video streaming network that provides the necessary infrastructure for broadcasting video over the internet at a fraction of the cost to today's cloud infrastructure. Learn more at livepeer.org.
Hello and welcome to my presentation for the Developer DAO. First of all, thank you very much for attending. I'm very excited to see you join the Web3 space. And I'll give you a bit of a quick intro about myself. My name is Julien Genestoux. I'm a CEO and founder at Unlock. I'm a software engineer first, and I've been a hacker in the open web for about 15, 17 years at this point. And I'll tell you the story about Unlock at some point, but I'd like to get started with maybe a bit of a backstory on the web. You're all familiar with status codes, probably HTTP status codes. 404 is the most famous one. It's the one called not found. The rumor has it that it's coming. It's actually the name of the server room at CERN in Switzerland when Tim Berners Lee worked on the HTTP first version of the HTTP protocol. And that server's room basically would return 404. Actually, the protocol would return 404 as a way to say, hey, we can't find what you're looking for because it's not in the server room. The server room 404. But there's more than just 404. You probably know of 200. You probably know of 500, which are server-side errors. Another one that's missing is the HTTP status 4.2, and you can actually go look up the spec online, but what's interesting about that status code is it is still marked as, it's payment required, and I would argue that is actually the original sin of the web in many ways, because the specification for that status 4.2 still says to this day, more than 30 years after it was written, reserved for later use, which means that basically when Tim Berners Lee and the rest of the initial hackers on HTTP worked on the web, they didn't have a way to think about how to monetize, how to actually make money an important part of the web. And I would argue this is actually what eventually created the Web 2 space as we know it right now, with a lot of bad incentives, but at the same time created the opportunity for us in the Web3 space to think about how we can do things and why we could do things better. So obviously, and I'm going to try and move this around, since there was no way to monetize at the protocol level in the early HTTP spec, some creators started to think about ways to monetize, and obviously they mimicked the model of the TV or the radio, where ads were a pretty dominant thing. And in I think it was '94, Hotwire.com put out there the very first banner ad. It's not quite this one. I actually couldn't find it online, but I found interesting numbers. The conversion rate, or the click-through rate, should I say, on that banner ad was nearly 70%. So 7 out of 10 visitors that would see the ad would click on it because it was the first one. So people were not yet tired of seeing them. And it was obviously a way to make advertisement. So that banner would send people to a different site, and Hotwire.com was getting paid by these third-party sites based on a number of people that would click on the ad. So very quickly, 2 years in, but 94, so pretty long time ago, the banner ad started to emerge as the monetization layer, and from there we started to have the web being monetized through attention, and that created obviously a lot of interesting issue, and I would argue that things went down pretty quickly from that point. The first one, and again some of you might remember this, in the early 2000s or late 90s, people complained a lot about information overload, the idea that there is too much stuff on the web. Well, the reason for this is actually pretty simple. If you think about this banner ad again, publishers or website owners understood that the more eyeballs they could get on any page, the more people would click on them, and obviously the more revenue they would make. And so they would also realize that basically they could just fill the web with information, useful, relevant, doesn't matter. Just put more stuff out there. There's always going to be one random person that's going to, at some point, find themselves on that page and click on it. It's really the idea that the publication price is so cheap, it's so cheap to actually put content out there that publishers were incentivized to put more and more and more, creating kind of useless content and creating this feeling of information overload. Very quickly after this, obviously, some other people realized, like, you know what, putting information out there is not enough. We need to attract the eye a little bit, and so that's when clickbait started to appear. So, you know, these kind of question mark titles like, wait, guess what happened after this? And that clickbait was very well adopted by some publications and some websites and some social networks as well, as a mechanism to increase engagement and make sure that people would be more likely to click the ads and make more money for the publishers and the advertisers. The third one is maybe more recent. It's the idea of fake news. At that point, it actually doesn't really matter if it's true or false, as long as it creates outrage. And why is it important? Because outrage is the thing that people tend to reshare. So it's the idea that social networks are actually massive vectors for virality. And so if you are able to publish content that is fake, but will upset people or will make people very excited or something like this, then you're more likely to see that content being reshared on social networks and things. And so obviously fake news is a direct consequence of that business model that the web has had since the beginning around attention. Well, another thing that started to appear pretty quickly as well along with these ads is the realization that, you know, if you are, as a publisher, as somebody who publishes content online or has a website, if you're able to spy on your users, to know more about themselves, know more about what they like, know more about the website that they visit, well, you're going to be able to serve ads that are going to be more targeted and more relevant to their interests, and so they will be more likely to click on them and more likely to follow through. And so similarly as the banner ad was invented in '94, that's roughly the time as well at which cookies, that we all know, not the edible cookies, but the technical cookies, started to appear in the mid-90s as well, as a way to turn the stateless HTTP protocol, which basically had no information about users, into something that allowed to keep track of users. And you might have seen recently that, for example, Facebook stocks crashed very significantly. It's because Apple changed the rules on how cookies are being stored and kept on iOS devices by preventing third-party cookies specifically to be able to track users across websites. And so obviously that's a massive mechanism to increase conversion rates on ads and obviously increase revenues for publishers that are using them. But maybe one interesting thing as well to realize is like this attention economy is actually not even good at capturing value. One of the things that's pretty obvious to me is like when you're, say, a musician and you have fans, some of your fans are the strongest fans, and so they're going to be pretty high on that demand curve. They would be the one going to every single concert, buying all of the swag, back in the day buying the CDs, buying the vinyls maybe even, and really being very engaged with the creator. At the bottom of that curve, obviously, it's people that are kind of more casual listeners, people that are not that frequent or not that big of a fan. The challenge with the attention economy, well, it just captures the same amount of value from everyone. Basically, it's just whether you're a big fan or whether you're actually somebody who's just a passerby, the amount of money that the creator is going to make is pretty much the same across the board. There's no real way to capture that value that basically the biggest fans would be willing to contribute to their favorite artists. There's some numbers recently that came out, but if you think about Netflix and Facebook, in the US at least, the average user spends roughly the same time, about an hour a day on Facebook and an hour a day on Netflix. Facebook is obviously ad-driven, Netflix is obviously subscription and membership-driven, and the ARPU, the average revenue per user on Netflix, is about 3 times higher than Facebook. Even though Netflix has way less users and also obviously doesn't have a big massive machine to optimize the kind of content that people are seeing. They do some of interesting AI and machine learning things, but it's not to optimize for ads, it's actually to optimize for engagement of users and the content that they're going to see. So really, if you think about the attention economy, per minute spent actually is a pretty bad way of capturing value for creators from their fans. And maybe another thing that's interesting is like we say, well, at least with the ads, everything is free. We don't pay for things. We don't pay for Facebook. Well, the challenge actually is not that true. First, there's a lot of externalities that we've seen earlier around fake news and the degrading discourse online, which I think are things that we cannot ignore. But even beyond that, you have to think about the fact that the data that your cell phone consumes on the internet, about almost 50% of it on news sites, at least in the US, is for ad purposes, either serving you ads or serving you the trackers that optimize for these ads. I was recently in Canada, actually, last week, and Canada is one of the countries that has the most expensive data plans. It is almost, if I remember correctly, almost $7 per gigabyte worth of data on mobile. So if you think about the free version of mobiles of the web in Canada, well, you're literally spending $3.50 for every gigabyte of data that you download to pay for ads, so that you don't pay for the content that these ads are displayed on. This is kind of completely backwards, where you end up paying bandwidth to get ads, so that you don't pay for the content itself. In the US, it's also pretty expensive. I think it's between $5 and $6 per gigabyte on average. In some other parts of the world, it's much cheaper. And in Europe, it's much cheaper. But still, even beyond the bandwidth, there's other costs. Like I recently purchased a new phone because my older phone felt slow. But in practice, the phone itself did not become slower. It is the internet become more, and it's pretty well documented, becomes more and more bloated. The web pages are heavier and heavier with more and more JavaScript, with more and more things that are actually oftentimes just there for you to see ads. And these performance issues are the reason why you end up buying new phones, why you end up recharging the battery more often, and all of these things actually have a tangible cost. So again, you don't pay for stuff online, but you pay for all of the things that allow you to not pay for the stuff online, even though you might want to actually pay for some creators and some musicians that you really care about. My big point is that there's a better way. And for this, you have to go back almost again to the origin of the web and realize, like, one of the things that the web has always done very well is the idea of communities. So this is kind of a map that you might have seen oftentimes. It's kind of late in the story of the web, pretty early 2005 or something like this. It's the idea that the web itself is kind of this massive ocean with a lot of different lands, archipelagos, islands that are all different communities and might actually have some overlap. And so if you look at this, you can see stuff like Second Life, which obviously has been still exists, I think, but it's been replaced in our space with stuff like Decentralized and others. You see Facebook, you see LiveJournal, LiveJournal is bigger than Facebook. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. It is the idea that these communities exist online, and well, as communities, maybe the idea of the membership, the idea of being part of a community, is something that could be used to monetize for things. Obviously, these memberships are the alternative here. I put 3 examples here. One from the very old, almost Web 1.0 New York Times. They have a paywall now with, I think, nearly 10 million paying members monthly, which is kind of massive if you think about this. I mean, if the average revenue is $10 per user, we're talking about $100 million a month in revenue from membership. This is just insane. Another example of membership is obviously in the Web3 space, in the crypto space, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. You probably have heard of this at this point, obviously. And if you think about this is kind of a membership. Like, all of the people that have at least one Bored Ape in their wallet are part of the same kind of club, the Yacht Club, in that way. Another example of membership that is not about content this time, or maybe actually does have some content, but initially was created around benefits for e-commerce, is the idea of the Prime membership. So that membership object that, again, dates back from the origin of the web, these kind of early bulletin board systems, the only early forums that we would go to, is something that could have been used as a primitive, basically, as a way to, hey, you want to access this thread, you want to access this channel, these features, well, you're going to become a paying member. And that's literally what these examples here are doing. Bored Ape, New York Times, and Prime are all paid for memberships. One of the things that I'm deeply convinced about is that even though they exist and we see more and more of these membership, and moving this thing around again, all of these memberships still behave very differently. The Bored Apes membership have nothing to do with the New York Times membership. You have, on one side, you have something that is Web3 based, obviously, but on the other side, you have something that is You have to create an account, put your email, password, kind of remember these because you're going to have to log in on your mobile device after the desktop, and then put your credit card number in there, make the payment, and you know that every month you're going to be charged on your card. But it's not that easy to cancel. It's definitely not easy. It's not easy. It's not even possible to transfer that membership. So one of the big bets that I want to make, and again, I've been building on the open web for a little while. I actually wrote a W3C specification called WebSub about webhooks, is that there is value in building protocols, in building standards that will allow these memberships to work the same across the web, wherever they are, either on a small indie website, my blog, for example, a small simple application. You can actually easily add a membership to an Express.js application or a React application, or even kind of very large platforms like obviously Netflix or Amazon could have their own membership. Actually, they do have their own membership, but could use the same membership protocol that everybody else, so that it becomes really easier for users to go on a website, connect their wallet, unlock the membership, provide the credential, the proof that they own one NFT, so show the member's card, show that NFT, and then allow them to access the premium benefits of the membership. And that's really what Unlock is trying to achieve here. The idea here, and I mentioned it already, it's the idea that the members card itself is the membership, and the members card itself is represented as a non-fungible token. So at Unlock, we obviously have been doing NFTs for 2.5 years, so way before it was cool by anyone. And it's the idea that CryptoPunks as NFTs are membership to the CryptoPunks holder club, but every single project could have NFTs. Obviously, when you think about NFTs as profile pages, or even arts, there are NFT that have characteristics that actually are not necessarily required by the NFT specification themselves. So let me give you an example. For example, these NFTs here are forever NFTs. Like once you have a Bored Ape, it's in your wallet forever unless you sell it or transfer it. But you could definitely imagine that the NFTs have on-chain an expiration date. So you could say, hey, you know what? You're a member of this community for a week. At the end of the week, you might sell the NFT in your wallet, but it's going to be marked as expired. So if you show up on the site, on a Discord, and you say, hey, give me access because I have the NFT, the website will say, yeah, you do have an NFT, but yours is expired now. You need to top it up. Another criteria that I think is quite important is the idea that NFTs, as we think of them, are usually paid for. You purchase a CryptoPunk, but there's nothing in the NFT specification that says that you can only purchase them. You can earn them by doing some action. So, for example, on my blog, where there's a membership, you can earn a membership, an NFT, by following me on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, you're going to get, I think it's 30-minute worth of access to my content, while if you paid for the membership directly, then you would be able to access it for about a year. So that's really kind of the another example. Another aspect that people think a lot about is like NFTs. People think are what's the right way to say this? Are scarce and limited in resource. So CryptoPunk is a good example. There's 10,000, but there's nothing in the specification that actually says that there's only a limited number of of NFTs on the contract. The contract could have 5, 10, 20, or even an unlimited supply. So in the context of an unlimited supply, you might argue that it's not that valuable, or would not appreciate in value because anybody can purchase a new one. But it really is the idea that NFTs are beyond speculation, also have a usability layer that actually is very interesting and very useful. Where NFTs are really interesting and where they shine is because they actually allow users or creators to kind of unlock the tiers on the fan pyramid. So if you go back to the demand curve earlier, well, you think that random followers are the least engaged users. They're here, but they're still willing to dedicate a little bit of attention to the creator, but not necessarily willing to contribute themselves. So in that scenario, that's kind of the example on my blog. They can earn a little membership card, a little membership NFT that's valid for a small amount of time that gives them access to some benefits, but probably not all of the benefits. As they grow their interest in the community, in the artist, well, they become casual fans. So this time they come back more often, and maybe they start paying for some experiences. Maybe they do a couple of micropayments here and there to earn the rights to use some features. They slowly will become more engaged, more active fans. They now are actually willing to pay for more and more content. because they see this as a contribution to the artist's revenue. At some point, they become super fans. Super fans are highly engaged. They pay for access. They pay for status. They want to actually tell their friends and kind of have the bragging rights of saying, hey, you know what? I'm one of these early adopters of these, or early members of that specific community. And eventually you can even move into the idea of the cult fans. They pre-fund the work, so they're actually willing to pay even before the work is done by the creator, or they might want to buy multiple memberships as a way to show their strong support, and want kind of the original. In these scenarios, they actually want or care very much about the scarcity, as I said earlier. They want to know that there's going to be at least 10, at most 10 or 100 of these cult fans like themselves, and they consider themselves as kind of the OGs of the community here, or the artist. This wraps up my presentation for today. It really is quite important to think about memberships as a core primitive in the Web3 space, as a way to easily monetize any kind of content, any kind of application. It doesn't mean that you have to token gate all of the content, token gate all of the features, but providing at least status to your most engaged users is a very good way to embrace new business model in the Web3 space. With that, thank you very much. Please follow me on Twitter, Julien51. Check out unlock-protocol.com if you're interested in deploying your own membership contract, or if you're interested in learning more about the membership protocol. Thank you very much. Chat soon.